حي على الفلاح.
Kashmir has long captivated the world with its breathtaking beauty and complex history. From ancient civilizations to medieval empires and modern-day conflicts, this region has witnessed a remarkable journey shaped by diverse cultures, shifting powers, trade, and political struggles. Kashmir has been a major center of learning since ancient times. It has been a seat of religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, particularly Brahmanism and Islam. Kashmir today is largely a Muslim state, with 97% of the region's population as Muslims. But what led to the beginnings and growth of Islam in Kashmir? Islam started making inroads in the 12th and 13th centuries. The earliest copy of Quran in Kashmir dates back to 1237 AD and was calligraphed by Fatih Ullah Kashmiri, who was believed to be a then Kashmiri Islamic scholar. The first Muslim missionary in Kashmir was Sayyid Sharafuddin Abdurrahman Suhrawardi, popularly known as Bulbul Shah. He was an extensively traveled preacher and came to Kashmir during the reign of Raja Suhadeva, the king of the Lohara dynasty. Subsequently, according to some traditions, 10,000 Kashmiris converted to Islam, and hence the seeds of Islam in Kashmir were sown. The spread of Islam among Kashmiris was further boosted by the arrival of a host of other Sayyids, most prominent among them being Sayyid Jalaluddin, Sayyid Tajuddin, and Sayyid Hussein Simanani. However, the greatest missionary whose personality wielded the most extraordinary influence in the spread of Islam in Kashmir was Sayyid Ali Hamadani of Hamdan, Persia, popularly known as Shah-e Hamadan. He belonged to the Kubrawi order of Sufis and came to Kashmir along with 700 disciples and helpers. The history of Kashmir in the ancient era dates back several millennia. The region's earliest known civilization, as per current historical evidence, emerged during the Bronze Age around 3000 BCE as part of the vast Indus Valley civilization. Excavations at sites like Manda, Burzahum, and Harwan have revealed remnants of advanced settlements, including well-planned houses, pottery, tools, and intricate artwork. During the 4th century BCE, the Mauryan Empire, under the rule of Emperor Ashoka, expanded its domain and incorporated Kashmir into its vast realm. Ashoka's inscriptions found in the region provide evidence of his influence and efforts to propagate Buddhism. In the 1st century CE, the Kushan Empire, led by the Emperor Kanishka, again brought a flourishing Buddhist culture to the region. Kashmir became a significant center for Buddhist learning, attracting scholars and monks from far and wide. After the decline of the Kushan Empire, Kashmir came under Gupta rule, under which it experienced a period of prosperity and cultural growth. This era witnessed the rise of Shaivism, a sect of Hinduism dedicated to Shiva as a prominent religious tradition in Kashmir. After the decline of the Gupta Empire in the 6th century, local rulers and regional kingdoms started emerging, vying for control over the region. In the mid-7th century, the famous Chinese Buddhist scholar Huan Chang traveled to Kashmir and found more than 100 Buddhist temples in the city of Srinagar alone. For almost 1,000 years, Kashmir's ruling Brahmins had tolerated Buddhists' efforts to spread their way of life in the region. However, by now, Buddhism had become popular enough to be deemed a threat by the Brahmins' power. The rulers thus started to oppress the Buddhist population, ushering in a period of Kashmir's history that has been described as a time of Brahminical orthodoxy and revivalism. In an atmosphere of such intolerance and oppression, many downtrodden lower-caste Hindus as well as Buddhists were ready for any relief that the arrival of a new religion, Islam, might offer them. It is not very surprising that when the first Muslim preachers arrived in Kashmir, the Kashmiri people converted to Islam in floods. But this relief did not come soon. Even though Umayyad Muslim forces had reached nearby Afghanistan and Sindh in the early 8th century, political turmoil in the central Muslim lands, culminating the Abbasid Revolution in 750, meant that neither Islamic conquest nor preaching activity reached Kashmir for a long time yet. But there was some interaction. In 711, a Syrian Muslim militant general, Hamim ibn Sama, came to Kashmir in the company of Jaisiya, the son of the Sindh's Hindu ruler, Raja Dahir. Dahir was defeated by the Umayyad forces of Muhammad ibn Qasim earlier that year, and Jaisiya fled to Kashmir, seeking refuge. It is unclear why Hamim went with him. The most likely explanation is that Hamim was taken as a prisoner of war. The ruler of Kashmir at the time was probably Durlabhaka Pratapaditya II of the Karkota dynasty, and though his seat of power was in Kashmir, he ruled over a much larger empire. Kabul and Gandhar, the Peshawar Jalalabad region, had been under his rule before they were lost to the Muslim conquest. This seems to have had an impression on him, and it is possible that he treated Hamim bin Sama so well in an effort to establish good relations with the Umayyads. Hamim was warmly welcomed at his court and given a large plot of land where he built Kashmir's first mosques. There are other references to interactions between mostly Hindu Kashmiri people and their Muslim neighbors in Central Asia. About a century after Hamim's story, another Hindu king of Kashmir's Karkota dynasty sent a letter to Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Abdul Aziz of Mansura, asking him to send a knowledgeable Muslim to Kashmir to explain Islamic law in the local language. Also in the 9th century, a Persian Muslim traveler, Buzurg ibn Shahrayar, recorded in his travelogue, The Wonders of India, that the Hindu king in Kashmir had ordered for the Quran to be translated into the Kashmiri language. By the 12th century, we find mention of Muslims serving in the loyal court and army of the Kashmiri Hindu king Harshadeva. Thus, the story of Muslims in Kashmir in this early period remains vague. On one hand, there is some evidence to suggest that Muslims were influential even in the Brahminical royal courts, and that many lower-caste Hindus and Buddhists embraced Islam. On the other hand, however, there is not much evidence of the steady growth of the Muslim community in Kashmir. In fact, it is only in the late 13th and early 14th centuries that we even find the first recorded Muslim preacher in Kashmir, a Sufi named Sayyid Sharfuddin Abdurrahman, but remembered as Hazrat Bulbul Shah. He is said to have received his nickname because he was such a lover of the Prophet's example that he became known as Bilal, after the very close companion of the Prophet ﷺ. The name Bilal was later corrupted into Bulbul. As his title Sayyid suggests, his family claimed direct descent from the Prophet ﷺ and were known for their piety. He studied in Baghdad and then traveled widely, first through Central Asia and then to Kashmir, where he arrived in 1295. During the reign of the last Hindu king of Kashmir, Raja Suhadev. After a brief stay in Kashmir, he left, but returned almost 30 years later, this time possibly with some of his disciples. At the time of Bulbul Shah's first visit, the Brahmins' rule over Kashmir was seriously in trouble. By the time he came back, it had completely collapsed for the first time in history. Meanwhile, Shah Mir, a Hindu Rajput, from modern-day Afghanistan had also arrived in Kashmir for unknown reasons. He may have been seeking a better job. He served in the administration of Raja Suhadev, but they were not the ones to jumpstart that process. In 1319, the Mongol warlord Zulku invaded Kashmir and spent 8 long months making a bloody mess in Kashmir and razed entire towns to the ground. Zulku was, after all, a direct descendant of Chinggis Khan and the grandson of Hulagu Khan, who in 1258 had similarly destroyed Baghdad and brought the Abbasid Empire to an end. As this devastation unfolded, Raja Suhadev packed up and fled to Kishtwar, leaving his military commander-in-chief Rawan Chandra in charge. This proved to be a fatal mistake, as Raja Suhadev lost all respect and legitimacy in the eyes of his subjects. Many Kashmiris fought valiantly against the Mongols, including La and Shah Mir. Once the Mongols eventually retreated and the smoke cleared, La emerged as a leader with strong public support in Kashmir. La recognized that he was in a position to take control, and in 1320 he deposed Rawan Chandra and became the first Buddhist king of Kashmir after centuries of Brahmin rule. He then made his comrade Shah Mir his chief minister. Shah Mir was a Hindu, but during Raja Suhadev's time, he would often disguise himself as a Muslim in the evening and sit inside a small inn in Srinagar that served as the local mosque. There he would listen to the lectures by Muslim preachers. And gradually, he began to become more and more interested in Islam. On one occasion, a Sufi dervish from Kabul visited Srinagar and delivered a lecture that really moved Shah Mir. The chief minister converted to Islam right then and there, even telling this dervish that he was willing to give up his post in the royal court if he had to for the sake of Islam. The Sufi dervish encouraged Shah Mir to reveal his new faith to Raja Suhadev. Shah Mir was convinced that he would lose his job as soon as he did so, but he went ahead and did it anyway. To his surprise, neither the Raja nor his advisors at the royal court thought Shah Mir's Islam would affect his dedication and excellence as an administrator. Later on, La recognized the same qualities in Shah Mir, which is why he appointed him as his chief minister. It is likely that Shah Mir was the first Muslim who La knew so personally. La has been described by historians as an inquisitive and alert young man, fond of the company of learned men. He would spend hours with Buddhist and Hindu priests discussing religious matters, but he rarely found their opinions satisfying. Though he was a Buddhist, he felt that Buddhism had been polluted by foreign influences. He disliked Hinduism for the discriminatory caste system and for the Brahmins' arrogance. He apparently did a lot of soul-searching in the early part of his rule, spending sleepless nights praying for guidance and weeping profusely. At the same time, he was deeply troubled by the constant infighting between his Hindu and Buddhist subjects. A sudden encounter proved to be a transformational experience both for him and his kingdom. As the story goes, one morning he looked out of a window in his palace and saw Bulbul Shah performing the Fajr, dawn prayer, on the banks of the river Jhelum. He went out to meet this man and eventually started to learn about Islam from him. He was so impressed by the teachings of Islam, which were simple, free from useless ceremonies, caste, and priesthood, that in 1323 he accepted Islam and changed his name to Malik Sadr ad-Din. History records him more often as La or Rinchen Shah after his original Buddhist name. The first ever Buddhist ruler of Kashmir now became the first ever Muslim ruler of Kashmir. As an anonymous Persian text in the history of Kashmir later put it, Malik now subjected himself to the teachings of the religion of the Prophet ﷺ, the right principles of the truthful path of Murtaza, and embraced the Islamic religion with sincerity and conviction. Malik's family converted to Islam after him, and many other Kashmiri leaders, notably Rawan Chandra, soon followed. More low-caste Hindus and Buddhists started to embrace Islam during this time as well, convinced that it would free them from the remaining shackles of the Brahminical system. It is said that Bulbul Shah was thus ultimately responsible for the conversion of 10,000 Kashmiris to Islam. The impact he had on the history of Islam in Kashmir is undeniable. Bulbul Shah found a home on the banks of the river Jhelum and spent the rest of his life in Kashmir. Malik set up for him a khanqa, a Sufi center where Sufi clerics and their students could retreat for traditional education in the heart of Srinagar, and also built 2 mosques nearby. From this khanqa, Bulbul Shah delivered lectures for many years, and many of his students played a role in spreading Islam further in Kashmir and beyond. Malik also established a community kitchen where the poor were fed for free, twice a day. Malik's rule, however, does not seem to have lasted very long, as he faced a rebellion and died within a year of embracing Islam. In 1327, Bulbul Shah passed away as well, and was buried in Srinagar, where his shrine is still visited today. But before he passed away, Bulbul Shah made one of his outstanding disciples, Mullah Ahmad, responsible for continuing preaching activity in Kashmir. Ahmad was soon to become Kashmir's first Islamic scholar. After several years of political struggle, Malik's chief minister, Shah Mir, came to power in 1339, rebranding himself as Sultan Shamsuddin. He consolidated Muslim rule in Kashmir. Part of this involved appointing Mullah Ahmad as the Shaykh al-Islam of Kashmir. Ahmad wrote many works, including the Fatawa Shihabiyya, a compendium on Islamic fiqh, jurisprudence, the Al-Shahab al-Shaqab, a treatise on Sufism. Shamsuddin's descendants ruled Kashmir until the mid-16th century. It was during the reign that Mir Sayyid Ali ibn Shahab ad-Din Hamdani, a famous Sufi sheikh of Persian origin, came to Kashmir not only as another famous preacher, but also as a social reformer, and left behind the legacy, along with his students, of initiating the second wave of the spread of Islam in Kashmir, and of having a lasting influence in Kashmiri Muslim culture. Significantly, it was during this time that Farsi replaced Sanskrit as the official language of Kashmir. Apart from Shah Hamadan, there were other Sayyids who had come to Kashmir to preach and propagate Islam before the arrival of Shah Hamadan himself. The Sayyids influenced many ascetics in Kashmir, who then came up to be known as Rishis or Babas. They further helped to spread and propagate Islam with their mystic and philosophical thoughts. Their profound knowledge of Islam, humility, and respect for other religions attracted many people towards this new faith. Saints and Rishis like Sheikh Nuruddin, Baba Nasruddin, and Sheikh Hamza Makdoum practically converted the whole valley through their precepts. Many of the Rishis and their disciples constructed ziyarat, which would uphold the tradition of their saints, to which people pay tribute to this day. Another reason that influenced conversion to Islam in the Kashmir Valley was poverty. Since the economy of the state was in crisis, the Sayyids brought many crafts and activities with them, which people later took as their profession in search of a better livelihood. Another possible reason could be Brahman dominance in society and a rift between Brahmanism and Buddhism. In addition, the emergence of landlords, unrest and mutiny in garrisons, quick successions of kings, and a lack of intellect and humility among ministers also resulted in unrest. This eased the path for Sayyids and Rishis, leading to the current Islamic nature of Kashmir, which has not only influenced the religious character, but also socio-cultural aspects of the valley. Therefore, the state of Kashmir, which today represents itself as a Muslim-majority state, once went through large-scale religious conversions, political, economical, and social changes. This eventually changed the demography of the state. However, what never changed for Kashmir and its people is its indigenous aspect. which is essentially the amalgamation of different cultures, traditions, and customs. Today, the Himalayan region of Kashmir has been a flashpoint between India and Pakistan for over 6 decades. Since India's partition and the creation of Pakistan in 1947, the neighbors have fought 2 wars over the Muslim-majority territory, which both claim in full control in part. Today, it remains one of the most militarized zones in the world.